Okay, for the Republican debate tonight, Fox News is the official channel on which you can watch the debate. Rumble is also a streaming partner. But Fox News released some absolutely bananas rules for debate excerpts, like totally bananas. I'm laughing at it because it's that crazy that they released this. This is what they said. They said Fox News has secured exclusive media rights to the Fox News Republican primary debate with partners Young America's Foundation and Rumble, taking place in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, airing on Fox News Channel, as well as Fox News Radio, Fox News Mobile, foxnews.com on August 23rd, et cetera, et cetera. These are the rules. Permission to use the debate, meaning video or audio, is only granted if the following restrictions are adhered to. Number one, an appropriate, unobstructed on-screen credit, i.e. courtesy of Fox News Channel, must appear in the upper left or right-hand corner of the screen during the entire debate excerpt, and the debate excerpt must be introduced with an audio credit in a debate on the Fox News Channel. On radio, each excerpt must be introduced with the same audio credit. Oh, that's not all. That's not all. Number two, this restriction. During the 7-day period described in paragraph 4 below, you may not air more than a total amount of 3 minutes of excerpts from the debate in any one program, including video and audio. The excerpt footage must be taped directly from Fox News's telecast or obtained directly from Fox News and may not be obtained from any other source. Number 4, under no circumstance may an excerpt of the debate or portions thereof be used beyond the 7-day period beginning on August 23rd and continuing through August 30th. No archiving is permitted. So my first reaction to this is, oh, okay, well, this is going to change our post-debate show. If we can't use more than 3 minutes of debate footage, how are we supposed to discuss what happened? Because generally what we do in shows after a debate is we take about a 1-minute clip and we say, hey, these are the 10 most important points that were made in the debate. Here's why they were critical. Here's the mistakes that were made. Here was the best things that were said. We show it, we comment on it, we show another clip, we comment on it, and that's the show. You guys love those shows. I love doing those shows. They're always highly rated shows, and clearly Fox News is just a little bit threatened by that because they want to prevent us from being able to do that. So I read this, and my first reaction was, okay, well, this changes our post-debate show, which is annoying. And then I laughed because Fox News is so desperate and so pathetic. They come off like a pick-me girl. Like, nobody's allowed to touch anything that is associated with us. You have to come to our channel if you want to be part of the Cool Girls Club. And I thought, well, listen, what's going to happen here? This is actually an illustration of a cable news mindset where Fox News, maybe Paul Ryan, you can kind of picture Paul Ryan in the background pulling these puppet strings. Fox News thinks that if they prevent and prohibit anyone from using any of the clips of the debate, that everyone will tune in to Fox. But what will actually happen is not that. What will actually happen is older people will tune in to Fox probably, and younger people will just not watch at all. So the Republican message and all the Republican candidates will be entirely hidden from millennials and Gen Z, which is exactly the cable news mindset that is starting to be a huge problem for the Republican Party. It's one of the reasons why I left cable news and went independent, because I know how important it is to talk to younger people. Also, ironically, and this is the part that just made me die of laughter, if broadcasters and podcasters and radio show hosts and commentators aren't allowed to use clips of the debate that exceed 3 minutes for an hour-long show, then what are they going to do? Instead, they're going to use clips from the Tucker Carlson interview with President Trump, and they're going to analyze that interview. So Fox News, who fired Tucker Carlson because he was defending Trump over January 6th, is actually through their, and I'm trying to think of a polite word that doesn't rhyme with witchy right here, but their little witchy rules here, they're actually driving people to watch the two people that arguably Fox News hates the most, Tucker Carlson and Donald Trump. So make of that what you will. You can see exactly what kind of strategic minds are working behind the scenes at Fox right now. Here's what should happen in the debate tonight, though. Here's what should happen in the debate. And this goes for all candidates. This is the only way this debate is going to be anything other than a disaster. All these candidates must do one thing, which we're going to talk about in 1 second. But first, guys, I want to take a quick second to tell you about an organization that means a lot. It's called Delta Rescue. This organization is on a lifelong mission of caring for animals saved from the wild. I'm talking dogs, cats, even horses. Delta Rescue is the largest care for life animal sanctuary in the world. It's quite sad, right, that some pups are forgotten, left in the wilderness, neglected, but it doesn't mean they're any less special. Delta Rescue is providing the sort of love and care for these animals who need it the most. This is not an ordinary shelter, by the way. Again, this is a care for life, no kill. It's a super sanctuary for their rescued animals to play and love and eat and heal and be happy. Now, here's how you can help. Because Delta Rescue relies solely on the contributions from people like us to care for their 1,500 animals. No contribution is too small. Every dollar helps and goes directly to their animals. They also send out monthly newsletters that include heartwarming stories. I encourage you to take some time, visit deltarescue.org. They can answer all of your questions and are happy to speak with other Good Samaritans. This is not something you will regret doing. Again, that's deltarescue.org, deltarescue.org. So, regarding debate performance, there are, of course, 8 Republican candidates who will be on the stage tonight. I think most of us are probably just going to be looking at Ron DeSantis and looking at Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm going to look a little bit at Chris Christie just because what a spectacle that is. But none of the other candidates are realistic candidates, of course. But it doesn't matter. They're actually not up there to compete against each other, even though I understand it is a Republican primary debate. If they compete with each other, then they're just competing for second place because Trump is the front runner by such an enormous margin that if it ends up being DeSantis versus Ramaswamy and they're just trading barbs, then they end up looking like losers. The only way that this debate has an impact on the national political conversation is if it is a savage attack on Joe Biden and his destructive, evil policies from start to finish. These policies that have been forced on us, that violate our religious liberty, that violate our free speech, that try to label us as violent militia extremists, that want to indoctrinate our children with critical race theory and trans theory and moral relativism, that spend our money on Ukraine to the point where inflation is so high that our paychecks can't keep up. If that Hunter Biden, by the way, is let off easy while Donald Trump is indicted, if this debate is to be a success, then it has to be savage and it has to be aimed at Joe Biden and it can't be a tit for tat among these candidates. And they can't spend the entirety of the time talking about Donald Trump. That just makes them look like losers. If they act in any way other than the way I just described, then it's just going to be an embarrassment for the Republican Party. So Alex Jones was evidently right. He was correct. We discussed this on yesterday's show. Alex Jones had claimed that he talked to a high-level supervisor in the TSA off the record. The TSA employee was essentially a whistleblower. This TSA employee had told Alex Jones that the TSA was planning to reinstitute COVID mandates in September, meaning TSA employees and people at the airports were going to be required to wear masks, bringing back the mask mandates in September. And then in October, even people that were flying on airplanes would be required to mask the whole time. And we showed this yesterday on the show, and I said, I don't know if this is true. I don't know. It could be exaggerated. It could be somebody's opinion. It could be a conversation that was overheard. That's not policy. The individual who was talking to Alex Jones claimed that the policies had already been written. They just weren't ready for implementation until September or October. And I suppose September really isn't that far away at this point, although it seems hard to believe that the summer is coming to a close. But today, Steve Bannon's War Room reported that there are, in fact, federal contracts on the books with companies to begin enforcing COVID protocols in September and October. I want to read this to you a little bit. Let me bring this up. This was written by Natalie Winters. The title is Biden has allegedly begun buying COVID-19 equipment, hiring pandemic safety protocol enforcers. She writes, the federal government has started purchasing COVID-19 equipment and hiring advisors on quote unquote safety protocols amidst speculation the Biden White House will reinstate pandemic era lockdowns and mandates, War Room can reveal. The unearthed document contracts from entities, including the Department of Defense, show millions in taxpayer funds being used to purchase COVID-19 equipment, such as test kits. Some of the contracts, which are traceable via the federal government's spending database, are even scheduled to begin in future months, such as September and October. She then writes, the DoD, for example, gave Hologic Sales and Service LLC a $1.5 million contract beginning on October 1st that's set to conclude in May of 2024. The federal database reveals the funds are for COVID testing services in support of the Department of Pathology at Madigan Army Medical Center in Washington State. The Department of Veteran Affairs, the VA, also inked a $2 million contract with Abbott Molecular Incorporated beginning on September 2nd Set to conclude in September of 2024, the contract will provide testing services for viruses, including COVID-19. The VA also started a $1.3 million contract with Wildfire Diagnostics, LLC, on August 18th for its COVID testing, reagents, and equipment. Contract is slated to expire in August of next year, which, by the way, I think is important to note that all of these contracts have an expiration date, as if Biden can foresee the future and know when this virus will be vanquished. No. He simply knows when it will be advantageous to say, we defeated it once again, thanks to my foresight, thanks to the government interventions, right in time for Election Day. And then War Room reports on August 14th, the VA also began a $3.3 million contract with Oddball Incorporated for advisory on, quote, adequate COVID-19 safety protocols. The contract is also set to expire in August of next year, just in time for election season to begin, right in time for early voting. All of these COVID protocols are set to expire. So I guess this is another instance where Alex Jones was right. Alex Jones, who's been called a conspiracy theorist because he has engaged in some conspiracy theories, but he's been accused of engaging in conspiracy theories sometimes when he's been very, very right. It seems that he might be right about this. A college in Atlanta is set to reinstate mask mandates for the fall semester, which is beginning right about now. I'm going to bring this up on the screen as well. This is, what college is this? This is Morris Brown College in Atlanta, Georgia. And what's funny about this is not just that they instated a mask mandate, it's their timeline for this mask mandate. So you'll see this in the X post that we're going to put on the screen right now. This local TV station reported the mask mandate is a precautionary move for the next 14 days. So, like 2 weeks to slow the spread, something like that. Just a precautionary, temporary shutdown that we can expect to end at the end of those 14 days and not to be elongated for the next 2 years. If anybody believes this, they are out of their mind. Out of their mind. And for goodness sake, if you have a child going to this school, or if you're an alum who has ever given a dime to this school, pull it out. Get your child out of there and never give another cent to an idiotic institution like this. A big Hollywood company, Lionsgate, has also issued a mask mandate. And again, you have to laugh when you read this, even though it's not funny, because this Hollywood studio, Lionsgate, reinstated a mask mandate effective immediately for half of the company's employees, the ones who work in Santa Monica, California. That's where their HQ is. And the reason for this is because a couple of employees tested positive for COVID-19. Okay. Did they die? Were they sick? Or did they just pop positive because the new variant that supposedly is coming from Canada, scientists are baffled because they don't know if we have immunity against it. It's hard to trace its origin because it's nothing and no one even knows they're sick. No one even knows they're sick. Someone asked me, a friend texted me earlier actually, and said, listen, this stuff really freaks me out about these new lockdowns, these new mask mandates. Like, what is going to happen? Are we going to have to face this again? I'd like to think that the American people would simply say no and that these mandates would be rendered moot. They'd be neutralized because people just refuse to comply. But I also thought that in spring of 2020. I truly believed that the American people would say no when the lockdowns were imposed on us and when they were continued, when we were masked, when kids were masked in school, when the vaccine mandates came. I thought people would rise up and say no, and they didn't. Some of us did, and I'm grateful for you if you did that, but a lot of people didn't. Not enough of us stood up that it stopped the mandates and the lockdowns from being imposed on us. So I don't know what will happen. I hope and I pray that the American people have seen the light of day given what happened the last time, but I can't sit here and provide assurance of that because I thought it would happen the last time and I was disappointed. Now, Joe Biden visited Maui. He took a vacation from his vacation to go to Maui, and his reaction is so awful. Like, this is a truly bad man. We often make fun of him for being senile and being old and tripping and mumbling and blurring, but he's truly a bad person. And the people around him who act as puppeteers to him, directing him to act in this way, are bad people too. And there's a video that I'm going to show you that proves this. But first, I want to talk to you about Bonner wine. Today, I have a special treat for you. It is a wine so rare that it sells out practically every time it's released. It's Bonner Private Wine's Sunological Malbec. It's a never-before imported gem. Picture this. Deep in a remote valley in Argentina, at a breathtaking altitude of 8,950 feet, sits the third highest vineyard in all the world. It's here that the Sunological Malbec is born. Now, what sets this bottle apart from home or restaurant wine? Sunologico is highly rated at 91 points. There's no fining or filtration done when producing Sunol, preserving its true natural taste. It boasts a staggering 10 times more resveratrol levels, and it has 93% less sugar than bulk grocery store reds. And Bonner Private Wines is the sole importer of this amazing Malbec. I have arranged for you to get a bottle of this exclusive wine by visiting bonnerprivatewines.com/Liz, becoming a member of Bonner Private Wine Partnership. You do have to act fast. This exclusive Malbec sells out quickly. You don't want to miss your chance. If you visit bonnerprivatewines.com/Liz right now, you'll not only get the Sunol, but you'll get your wine for over 50% off plus free shipping. So visit bonnerprivatewines.com/Liz to get your wine delivered directly to your doorstep. So Joe Biden took a vacation from his Lake Tahoe vacation to visit Maui. And while he was there, he essentially, this is a very weird characteristic of Joe Biden's. It's a very, I don't know if it's a combination of a character flaw and a social abnormality, or if he's just sociopathic, but he pretends that everything that anyone else has ever gone through, he has also experienced. It's like this weird obsession with being over empathetic. Like, oh, you've been murdered? You've had a family member murdered? So have I. You've lost someone in the war? So have I. You've had your home wrecked by a wildfire in Maui? So have I. Except he hasn't. But this is what he said to the victims of the wildfire in Maui. Take a listen to this. Joe Biden's fire in his home was contained to only his kitchen, and it was put out in 20 minutes. The fact that he would compare that experience, if he was out of his home, it was because what? He was getting a kitchen renovation? The fact that he would compare that experience to what happened in Maui, where through government neglect, after they'd been warned that there was a high risk of wildfires, they did nothing to prevent it. They didn't put wildlife or livestock on pastures of grass, wild grass, fire-prone grass where the sugar plantations were. They didn't turn off the electrical wires, even though they knew this storm was coming. They did nothing. There were no water in the fire hydrants. They didn't have an emergency system that worked. The fact that he would compare over 100 people who've been killed, 800 who haven't been accounted for, we don't know. Only the quote-unquote authorities in Hawaii know how many of those are children. That he would compare his little kitchen fire to what they're experiencing. I mean, this has to be some kind of personality disorder where he fabricates experiences to pretend to be empathetic. Everything that someone else has experienced, he's experienced the same thing. That is freaking weird. That is really weird. And then you know that this is all about politics, of course, because if you look at, if we can show element number 2 and element number 2 on the screen, this is Biden's reaction to when George Floyd died. After the death of George Floyd, this is how Biden reacted on the left-hand side of the screen. He is kneeling in a church with a mask at the funeral versus on the right-hand side of the screen when he's at a service in Maui. What's he doing? Well, the photograph makes it look like he's falling asleep, doesn't it? It certainly does. Now, is that just a bad angle that the photograph captured, or is there video that shows him falling asleep? There's video. Let's take a look at it.
We are a community that relies
He's
on
asleep. He looks like a 90-year-old in church on Sunday during a boring sermon. He's fallen asleep. Why? Because this doesn't serve his political interests the way that the death of George Floyd did. Oh, look, he woke up. Took a little nap, then he woke up. Joe Biden is a very bad man. He's not just weird. He's not just old. He's not just creepy. He's a very bad, bad man. So President Trump is set to surrender to authorities in Fulton County, Georgia tomorrow. He announced in a Truth Social post that he would travel to Georgia to be arrested. This is what he said. He said, "Can you believe it? I'll be going to Atlanta, Georgia on Thursday to be arrested by a radical left district attorney, Fani Willis, who's overseeing one of the greatest murder and violent crime disasters in American history. In my case, the trip to Atlanta is not for murder, but for making a perfect phone call. She campaigned and is continuing to campaign and raise money on this witch hunt. This is in strict coordination with crooked Joe Biden's Department of Justice. It's all about election interference." It truly is election interference, by the way. That's not hyperbolic to say so, because President Trump will not be allowed to defend himself publicly against these assaults on his character, these accusations against him, even though his political opposition will be allowed to levy these accusations against his character, these criminal charges against him. So it does actually make a difference in the outcome of the election. But I want to look a little more closely at his post here, because this phrase that he uses, he put it in all caps, so it's very easy for us to see. In my case, he says, the trip to Atlanta is not for murder, but for making a perfect phone call. Remember the phone call on which this entire prosecution hinges. It is when President Trump, after the 2020 election, spoke with election officials in Georgia and told them to find the votes. Find the votes. Now, Fani Willis and the left are willfully misinterpreting what President Trump meant. They're saying that he was directing his people to create votes, to fraudulently create fraudulent votes in order to bolster his numbers, in order to steal the election. But nobody with an ounce of a brain would interpret President Trump's words in that way. He said, find the votes, meaning there were votes cast for him that weren't properly counted. He didn't say create votes. He didn't say fill out ballots. He said, find the votes. Now, this may seem obvious to you and me because it is obvious, but this is what the left does. They co-opt language intentionally, redefine words and phrases in order to suit their political agenda and to use our words, which don't mean what the left says they mean, against us, in this case, in a court of law. And by the way, the Republicans in Congress could subpoena both Fani Willis and the Department of Justice to see exactly how coordinated this indictment of Trump is and how in the know the Department of Justice was and has been throughout this whole process. Republicans have an opportunity to take action here. It's just a matter of whether they're going to send out tweets condemning the weaponization of law enforcement, or whether they're going to actually do something for once. Do something for once. And worth noting, across the pond, Europe is oftentimes a good indicator of what is yet to come in the United States. They are a step further along the woke path than we are, just like they've been a step further along in spending too much in bloated welfare states. They're a step further along in many aspects of woke ideology as well, particularly the criminalization of free speech. And I want to show you exactly what's going to happen here because it's happening in the UK, our closest Western counterpart to a woman who dared to speak out against something that she found to be immoral and grotesque, which once you see it, I think you will agree. I do want to talk to you first about Morning Kick. Guys, you know Chuck Norris. He's an action star. He's a veteran. He's a family man, but he's also big on health. Get this. He says he feels better at age 83 than he has in years. And it's from making one change to his diet. What he realized is that after decades of trying every supplement out there, most of them did nothing for his health. So he put them all together in a daily drink he calls the Morning Kick. A very apropos name, I think we can all agree. The Morning Kick combines all 10 of Chuck Norris's favorite supplements into one daily drink. It's got probiotics that help you lose weight. It's got prebiotics for digestion. It's got superfoods for all those muscles and joints, and several of the most powerful anti-aging supplements on earth. If you want to try it for yourself, head over to mymorningkick.com/Liz. That's mymorningkick.com/Liz. mymorningkick.com/Liz. So an individual in the United Kingdom, I'm going to bring up this article. This is from Redux Mag. If you're not familiar with Redux, it's interesting because this is a radical feminist publication. The writers at Redux Meg and I probably agree on like two things in the entire world: that women are women and can't be men, and that men are men and can't be women. That's pretty much it. They're as radically feminist as you can be, but they have been playing a huge role in standing up for real women against the transgender ideology. This is what they write. They said in the UK, a social media user was warned by police after expressing concerns about a man who dresses like a baby and speaks to children in school. So you can see this picture. It's a very disturbing picture. It's an adult man with a 5 o'clock shadow wearing lipsticks and a wig, dressed in a polka dotted dress, holding a teddy bear and carrying a rainbow flag. On August 15th, Gender is Harmful, that's a group, posted a multi-part thread on X, formerly Twitter, providing details about a man named Richard Smith, the head of an autism awareness training group known as Autistic. In the thread, the user noted that Smith had a concerning history of dressing like a baby girl, as well as utilizing diapers, bottles, teddy bears, and other child-related accessories. While Smith claims he was, quote, cruelly neglected as a baby and uses these items as a method to, quote, aid his self-discovery, the behavior is more commonly associated with a fetish subculture known as the adult baby diaper lifestyle. Now, if you're disturbed by this, you should be, but it's pertinent to the story. Redux goes on to say, while social media history reveals that Smith dressed normally around the launch of his group, he began adopting childlike colors and dress in 2021, which appears to have continuously escalated over the years as he adopted more infant-associated wear and habits. You'll then see a picture of this adult man sucking on a pacifier, referring on Twitter to needing a change of a nappy, which is the British way of saying a change of a diaper. In the August 15th thread, Redux says, Gender is Harmful noted that Smith had adopted 2 vulnerable children and had been invited into local schools to speak to students with autism. Smith has stated that when he goes into schools, he uses his teddy bears and other quote-unquote aids in order to show children a confident person with autism. In 2019, Smith was gifted a yellow Ford Mustang by a local supercar shop in order to promote his charity. Smith claimed the car would be a way to engage with children by giving it the look of Bumblebee from Transformers, which the kids love. In 2023, Smith announced he was set to drive a new supercar, though never explicitly specified if the car was fully sponsored or in part paid for with Autistic charity funds. So as you can see, this person is deeply disturbed, very deeply disturbed, but then listen to the person who was targeted for pointing this out. This seems like something that should be pointed out. children, particularly autistic children, are vulnerable in school. They're vulnerable to indoctrination. That's why we have noticed a pattern that the transgender ideology has been targeted at autistic children, and there's a higher rate of autistic children who claim to have gender dysphoria and claim to identify as trans. Gender is Harmful provided multiple copies of the emails he was sent by Police Constable Will Sutton. So after he posted this thread on X exposing this adult baby, a constable contacted him. In the first email, the constable asks to speak to whoever is responsible for the Gender is Harmful X content, to which the user declined. Sutton, the police, then wrote once again shortly after, this time clarifying his reasons for communicating and stating a, quote, grown-up conversation was required. In an email littered with grammatical errors, the police officer wrote, I'm wanting to speak to them regarding a post that has caused a lot of negative comments and abuse, which at this stage I may be able to deal with via a grown-up conversation with those involved. Although, if it continues, it might lead to criminal matters around harassment or malicious communications. So if you could let me know who it is, that would be useful. If needs be, I'll have to go through relevant channels. I look forward to your decent, helpful, and law-abiding response. A few minutes later, the police officer wrote again, saying, the post in question related to a Richard Smith and Autistic. Could the post be taken down, please? As I mentioned, it may lead to further action. So think about this for a second. Think about this. The transgender ideology, which claims to want only inclusion and tolerance and equality, actually doesn't want any of that. They want you to be forced to celebrate their ideology. We know all of that. But what's happening in Europe, specifically in the UK, is what will happen in the United States 1 step, 2 step, 3 steps down the road. And what is this? This is the criminalization of free speech. This is what happened to Trump happening to an everyday person. So what's happening to Trump in Georgia is the criminalization of his free speech. His opinion, based on his analysis of election results, that something fishy happened in 2020, his words telling people to turn on a cable news channel or take part in political activism, that's the basis for the charges against him in Fulton County, Georgia. It is the criminalization of free speech. And we said when these charges were unveiled that the scary part of these charges, of course it's scary that the government's being weaponized against a political opponent of the president of the United States, Biden's political opponent, Trump. But what makes this indictment of Trump different is that this opens up these attacks to happen to us. That our speech is going to be criminalized. Our speech is going to be labeled not just prohibited, not just hate speech, but something that justifies us being put in prison. Well, it's not hypothetical because it's happening across the pond. It's happening in the UK where this individual pointing out that an adult baby, diaper-wearing adult fetish who goes into schools to talk to autistic children is messed up and creepy and perverted and weird and wrong, immoral and evil. That person who made that observation about the adult diaper-wearing baby is being threatened with criminal action if he doesn't remove the post from the internet. His free speech has been criminalized, and if he dissents from the transgender ideology, then the police say he could face criminal charges. Mark my words, what happens in Europe happens here next. All right, we have time for one more random thing from the internet. Let's see what we've got today. This is a photograph that said this used to be free, but now costs $1 due to inflation. It's air. It's air for your tires. If you want to fill up your tires with air, it's no longer free. You now have to pay $1 because of inflation. It's funny, not funny. Imagine charging for air. I can't imagine, actually, because the Biden economy, Bidenomics, are so destructive that we are paying so much more for everything than we used to that it's come to this. They're now charging us for air. Okay. Thank you for watching today. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show. If you haven't already, give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button below, and ring the bell to make sure you never miss a video.